call those.
Yes, right, okay.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to give you a heads up that, and it can be nerve-wracking to say
Our
the
first
least.
sticker shock was when one of the sports group out of Southern Ohio reached out to us, and for the consulting fee and for the engineering, not turning a shovel full of dirt, but just strictly for that size, was $111,000. So needless to say, we have been trying to do this in a different fashion and to try to answer what we're trying to accomplish before it's all over. Now, one thing I did fail to mention is that we do have a walking path here at Enum Park already. We're off the cul-de-sac. You've got some stations right along that. It goes over into kind of a dead end back in this area by the tree line between us, Enum Park, and Suburban Propane. Now, part of our plans too would be to have a standing walkway that would probably go back in this area, and then Todd came up with a good idea to leave this as somewhat of a nature walk, going down to the tip of the property, coming back up along the Warden's Ditch, taking it back around here, and there you see where we have an established path right there in that brown mark, where that takes us back into the parking lot, and then if you come back here, come back to the cul-de-sac and end up at Enum Park, that's about 1.75 miles. So that's a real nice little walking path, and especially if you get back in the nature area, I will call it back there, where we may not necessarily mow a lot of that. Todd was
We'll mow
talking.
the path,
Yeah.
but, then if any mud spots, we'll put some mulch. Trying to trim some, instead of putting all that money on blacktop right now, blacktop is
Right.
it's crazy. It just went up. It's went up, what, 33% in the past
Or
2
more,
years?
40.
Yeah. So just thinking about that, we thought, why not just make it grass, make it a nature path? If you need the blacktop, they can stay up in the original part of the Enum Park there. What do you have there? Half mile, quarter mile? What's, if you
It's
walk?
probably what, an eighth? Would it be?
Eighth.
Maybe an
Eighth
eighth,
mile, okay.
probably, yeah.
So you have to do a few laps to get a mile, but you know what I mean. At least they have blacktop there.
So you all are going to try to do as much as you can on your own as a community, or is this all going to be farmed out to
I've been in discussions with 3
contractors?
entities right now trying to get them to donate. We're going to work on that, and we'll get. I'm confident we'll get some.
An engineer's estimate isn't necessarily what it's going to end up costing us.
Right.
If we can do in-house things, we're going to save a ton of money. If we can find people that we can bring in on our own and coordinate, and I mean, Todd, even you know how to use that heavy equipment a little bit there. So, yeah, we're going to do the best that we can.
Do everything you can on your own. So, I mean, I'm like everybody else. Everybody thinks thinks the world of the whole project. It's just it's getting off the ground, and everybody's glad to see that. If we can do anything at this point to get that
And then-
archery range in there, I'd appreciate it. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But it's
Bring some
I think
targets.
I don't recall it, so thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Sure.
I had personally not seen anything until that Facebook had a post in there about the archery range, because I not even had heard that come up before.
I may have been the one that posted it. It was a while back that I talked about it, and then I might have been the one that put it on Facebook. I'm not sure. But,
Thank
well,
you for
anyway.
your comments. Appreciate it.
Yep, you bet. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bob.
Rob Glaze again. My wife's had a good idea. A green and cross-country course, because they don't have one of their own anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't know if that was an idea. Plus, I will say that Camp Birch has an archery range in Yellow Springs, so I didn't know
Oh, okay.
if Camp Birch be an option.
I didn't know they had one there.
How long is the cross-country trails?
So they're 3.2, 3.1, yeah.
5K.
One idea I think I saw was where somebody was talking about being able to tie that into a bicycle path back through there and maybe run it down the railroad tracks and join it with some of the established trails in Clark County. I thought that was a good idea. And before we get off of it, and the blackboard over there, the whiteboard, you can see some of the ideas that initially came in at one of our previous meetings. Across the top is the the nuts and bolts off of it, where it was purchased April of '22 for $542,000. Now, the township and the village went together 50-50 off of that and used some ARPA funding, which was for the American Rescue Plan, and that was for infrastructure and different criteria.
Parks and Rec, they let me spend it.
So we were able to use some of that. Chief?
The pavilion, I don't know who brought that up, but have you considered having things like venues there, for example, like sorts of shows, theater shows, maybe mild music events or some sort of comedy show? A pavilion would definitely bring in revenue, and you have Huber Heights that has that outside pavilion down there. Since you had it up there, I thought I'd throw that out there.
We talked about that, and we had reached out to some people had contact with some local entertainers. So we're still looking at possibly that, where if they would be so inclined to want to put on shows there, if it's been discussed.
Yeah, like the Date Art Institute, things like that. That's a pavilion. That's what it would be used for.
Can put circus under it, huh?
No, not in a pavilion.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Penny Creighton from the village. I live up off Green Vista, behind where the Indian Valley School was. Concern I have is parking, that you're making sure you have enough parking. We've lived there for 40 years, and we've seen traffic going back to those ball fields and stuff, and parking all over people's grasses. I mean, you see what happens when you have the Apple Butter Festival. So don't underrate what a tournament parking will bring in and what it'll do to the grass and the turf and everything around when people are trying to jam their cars in. The second thing is, I see you have water park up there, but maybe a splash pad would be a better idea. It would be cheaper, and I'm sure in the summer the kids would all enjoy something like a splash pad. And the third thing is a dog park. I know a lot of people think a dog park is a good idea. My veterinarian forbids me to take my dog to a dog park. My daughter's also a veterinarian, and she says never take your dog to a dog park. So many people don't vaccinate their dogs or give them the medicines they need, and it's a parasite playground for dogs. People don't clean up after their dogs. They take their big dogs in with little dogs. Again, my daughter says there's so many fights and things at dog parks. So I'd really get some input from some professionals like veterinarians as to whether a dog park is really the best idea. They can take their dogs and walk on the trails and have them leashed. Be a much better idea than a wild run free-for-all for a dog park. Just, my experience, and I've gotten 2 vets that agree, don't take your dog there.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? I saw Jay walk. Oh, sure. Sure,
Hello.
come on. Yeah. How you doing?
Good. My name is Brian Jackson. I live with Old Greenon on West Cliff Township. Just a couple questions. Time frame. I initially saw 2 to 12 years. Any ideas on that? And then also, can parts be used bit by bit, or does the whole thing have to be completed and then it can be used? Or
Our initial plan was 2 to 7 years. One thing we do want to try to do is to try to get in and start turning dirt on the President Enum Park as soon as possible. We are looking at this in stair steps because it is such a great expense. One thing that we have discussed, and Todd has been working actively on this, is having all the heavy dirt work done at one time while you have a contractor there, or possibly doing some of it again ourselves by renting equipment and some of us filling in on it. But it's not going to be something we can take in one bite. We'll have to do it over. We'd like to get the baseball and the soccer fields going as soon as possible. But some things too you can throw out there a lot quicker, whether it might be the dog park or some of the one field or 2 fields here before you put in all 4 or all 6 of them. So we're constantly trying to figure out, okay, how's the best way we can do this.
okay, so 2 to 7 years is kind of where the target is.
That's what I think we originally started talking about was try to have
Soccer
them.
fields right off the bat. So, and just kind of go from there.
Okay. Couple other things real quick.
Sure.
I see all the ponds and makes sense. We have to elevate it and all that. I know that I mean, it's minor in the scheme of things, but any geese control concerns? I mean,
I
Any-
play ball down at Kettering Fields.
any,
and-
why do we all golf, or some of us might golf, and
Yeah,
ponds
that's
and-
a constant problem. Of,
Using a
the
borrow
geese.
pit versus buying and bringing in fill, you couldn't afford it. So as far as getting rid of the geese, I don't know, how you do. You can either put up little coyote statues and little cut up coyotes. They only work for a few minutes.
okay, yeah,
These
I know.
trolls, I
my-
can see that coming.
Have every third Thursday, we'll just go shoot them.
Kettering Fields, that's a major problem as far as to, you slide, you tear some skin or something, and then possibly a staph infection because of that, the bacteria and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of ponds with ponds come geese. I just didn't know if that was even a topic at all. I mean, obviously this project is much outweighs having some geese having to deal with the stuff that they bring, but it's just one of those things that popped into a couple people's mind that I spoke to. Does Enon Little League have access to the facilities and all that? I think it was briefly
Our
discussed.
plan would be, yeah.
What's that?
Our plan would be to make the
Share
facility
access?
similar to a Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come essentially. So, and that would be where we really want to make it a place where people will want to come to and want to make it a place that is friendly and showcase our teams, hopefully.
And I guess to continue on that, because it's going to be owned not through the schools, but through village and township combining, I didn't know how that would all work out as far as Little League, with concessions and scheduling and all that. Just kind of curious how all that would come together.
And I don't think we're there yet, but
Okay.
but the dealing would be with the village and the township versus like the school district.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I know it was brought up a little bit earlier, but and a really good utilization of the space. Was there anything about Enon football, Pee Wee football, and anything up? Because I know
I
that
don't think so.
currently they're using BFW in those facilities, and I didn't know if there's any like the multi-use, which is a good idea. I didn't know if that involved that involved football or.
Have we
This
heard
one we
So
haven't
anything?
talked about.
football, Steve, nobody from Enon Pee Wee football has came down and expressed interest to needing a field. Enon Say Soccer has briefly reached out to us. Enon Softball has, just for the fact that we don't know what's going to ever happen with Enon Elementary. The softball could lose their fields too if the school decided to sell Enon Elementary. So, they reached out about having some fields down here, but we haven't heard anything from football. Like you said, if we have multi-use fields, absolutely we could fit them down there. But I don't know that is
Anything.
at the top of the list right now.
Yeah.
But I think
Okay.
obviously they could end up being down there if they needed to.
And you mentioned those two circle the wells in the future. What would be a reason those need to be dug or?
So the current well field that we have, those wells are aging. They're in pretty good shape. There's 3. We have a 4th one across the tracks. But for the future, down the road, 20 years, 30, we don't know the time frame, but it would be there for us. So we know they would be there and that resource would be available.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thanks, guys.
oh, thanks for your comments. Rob.
Hi, Rob Alexander. I'm at 1140 Meadowlark Drive. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having this vision. I think amenities attract families that we need here in Enon. They retain the families that are here. And so speaking of amenities, a couple of thoughts I had as I was listening to all of this. We've got this opportunity. We should put amenities there that we don't already have or that are not close by. The walking path that kind of snakes through there, it got me wondering, got me thinking, like just across the street at the Speedway headquarters, there's a walking path that goes around the pond and around that property. It just struck me like, do we need a walking path, a 2-mile walking path across the street from a walking path that's also roughly 2 miles?
That one's private. We're not actually allowed to use that from my understanding.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah.
So they
Public's
wouldn't
not
like
allowed.
that?
That's only for.
That's for their employees?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, just wondering. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm curious about the well fields, and you said no permanent structures can go on there. I am glad to see disc golf on there. I think that that's a sport that's rising in popularity, and it's not very expensive to create a course at all, nor is it to maintain it. Looks like it's a 9-hole course, all south of Warden's Ditch. I'm just trying to measure against the scale. It looks like a really, really short course, and I don't know if they were just kind of thrown on there or how much research went into the length of those. I feel like it might be crammed in there, maybe if that's what it has to be. I don't know if it's worth it. But my question is, in those well fields, if you can't have a permanent structure, is a goal, a basket, a disc golf basket, something you couldn't put out there? Because that would open up a lot more
That'd be
space.
for Tim, but I don't believe so.
Everything would have to be checked through the EPA. So anything is possible, but what we have come to learn, Rob, it's like before you get too far, you make the phone call and you discuss it with them. So
I think being able to shoot the discs across
The
Warden's
discs.
Ditch and across the pond over there would make for a funner course that's longer.
Gotcha.
And would attract more people to play it. As it is, I don't know that the small course there would be fun or adequate. So just something I would look into more before we get too far down the road on it.
You've got space over here. You've also got the terrace or the hill back in this back corner behind the Conley property. So that kind of, we kind of have the ability to put some of that stuff over around here. But again, that's, we
Guess
do
were
have some
saying
open
would there be any
space.
problem with kicking it across into that area
Yeah,
right there?
you could, one thing that's been recommended to us too is on this walking path, you could have like the Enon Matterer Hall of Fame where you might have stations along that might reflect to, was it Gus Grissom, was he from here? Different people that have made strides that lived in Enon in the township. So along that as well, exercise stations periodically. So you could stop and at certain intervals and be able to do certain exercises as you see. So I don't know why a golf game or the Frisbee golf couldn't be thrown in between some of these things for kind of like natural barriers, I guess, is one aspect.
Yeah, I kind of superimposed a diagram. I'll share it with you just for giggles. One last thing. I know I see the tennis courts. You talked about being able to play pickleball on them. I know that's possible. A lot of parks are just retrofitting that because pickleball, I don't play it, but I know it's the fastest growing sport.
it's
in the country.
huge right now.
And so if we're creating something new, I would actually say maybe think about being intentional about creating pickleball specific courts, and maybe a tennis court or two, because again, I don't know about access, but there's tennis courts at the high school, and most nights you can get on and play them. So it's an amenity that we have here, but we don't have pickleball, and many communities don't have it yet. I think that would be attracting a lot of people here. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate your comments. Now, I'm going to go over to Jay. You're with soccer, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if good to see you.
I see how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay Crow. I've lived in the township now for, almost 15 years. Recently took over the Enon Say Soccer, so our apologies for not having been involved up to this point. My apologies also for slipping in a little late this evening. Was on a phone call with our district getting ready for this upcoming fall season. Specifically, obviously interested in the soccer fields. What is currently shown would absolutely meet our current needs. If we are to grow at all, which we in the past have done rather significantly, we would need a little more space. Looking to bring, we used to hold the Kitty Hawk Say District or tournament here. We usually held it on Apple Butter Weekend, brought in a little extra revenue to the Apple Butter Festival as well. Parking, to echo a comment I heard earlier, is usually the biggest issue. When it comes to the fields themselves, it would be nice to have a couple more fields. We don't need as many large fields. What you see here looks like 3 large fields, a medium field, and then 2 smaller fields. On average, we use 1 large field, 1 full-size field. We usually use 2 middle-sized fields, which as of our meeting this evening, we don't need 2. We can step that down to 1. The smaller fields, we're going to need increased space. It looks like we're going to be combining 2 of our divisions on that size field. So 3, 4 of that middle size field would be great. And then we have our pre-say dribblers, our youngest groups, who use a field that is maybe half the size of that small field. So if we could find space to squeeze a couple of those fields in, I think it would be great. I absolutely think that this is a great idea and absolutely will benefit our community. Finding ways to utilize the space most effectively for not only amenities that we may already have at multiple locations, but providing these new locations and new amenities, I think is absolutely great.
So would you be able to give us like your preferred dimensions?
Yes, absolutely. I don't have them with me at the moment.
No, I get it.
Garrett,
but-
I don't know if you happen to have them.
They can be different. So if they're wider, they can be shorter. If they're longer, they can be narrower.
Yeah, but
They give us a range for the sizes based on the size of the
That-
goal.
that's
why I
our
was saying your
problem field
preferred.
right
I mean,
there.
if you had it your way, you know, what the preferred measurements might be, just so we can
Absolutely.
see if fitting them in,
Maybe we should.
you know,
Yep.
is an option, a viable option over, you know, what we have now.
Absolutely. It's usually based on the size of the goal itself. So they give us a range of field size. It's all relative to the size of the goal. One of the new safety items that we with Enon Say have been trying to fund the last few years, National Say organization has put forth that for safety, we now have to go to round post goals. So using round goals, especially if we had portable goals, something like that we could roll on, roll off, get them on the field, get off the field. Especially if we're talking about, I heard 2 turf baseball fields. We may not look at using an AstroTurf field, but especially using live grass, something we could roll out there and manipulate those fields as we see fit. The largest concern I think would be really is grass length, right? When it comes to kicking a soccer ball, if you get grass that's more than 5-6 inches, that ball just doesn't
Goes
move.
this far.
Yeah, you kick it. Those kids are kicking as hard as they can. It just does not go anywhere. So that becomes then our second question. Really, our biggest question is how often would those areas be maintained? Do we need to mark those out? I mean, essentially, they'd be marked out with posts and paint. I know we've had a discussion about what paint we use, making sure that we get the MSDS for all of those, all the safety documents, so that you can analyze that, especially with the well fields. But yeah, maintenance. Cut it once a week, cut it twice a week, once a month. Is that something where we need to consider that into our funding for the upcoming years? Whether we pay somebody to come out, get a sponsor to come help with that, or we've in the past with Enid Little League, we've split the costs on a mower and fuel. We used it in the fall, they used it in the spring, so those kind of things.
I think we're hoping that we get that same cooperation with the organizations to a certain extent. So I think we were thinking on the right track. So, yeah.
All
But I
right.
appreciate it, sir, because, you know, you tell an architect, 2
Right.
big fields, 1 small field,
Yeah.
they're gonna
Yeah.
look at you like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Dave, that's
Give me some
not cutting
dimensions.
it."
Absolutely, absolutely.
And this field particularly up here is not a full size, so it's about 3/4, realistically, to put it in there. So if you got something that's about 3/4 size of a full-size soccer field, then that would be ideal
Yeah.
in that one.
Did
We-
you say 3 small fields or 4 small
What
fields?
you show is the 2 smaller fields
Yeah.
there. If we could get 4, we now have
Okay.
2 divisions that are going to be playing on that roughly that size field.
Which they would probably almost fit if you turn them the other way and have
Right
2
there,
and 2.
Jeremy.
right there, exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing I was thinking.
Oh, that was up court.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah,
there, you could rotate that around where you could have 2 small ones essentially, probably.
Yep. The 2 that are in the outfield for the baseball fields, they don't necessarily have to be on an angle like that. You could swing them out. We just need grass. I mean, that's as long as we have area for grass, we're
Those,
good.
those would be our
next-
2 multi-purpose, so those would be turfed, and with that one
Okay.
and that one, so yeah.
Gotcha.
The next thing, how do you, if you mow them shorter, I mean, you know, it's gonna promote weeds. How do you, that's the
How
challenge
to
here.
prevent weeds from growing in grass.
Right, so you see what I mean? The challenge here is we can't use a lot of chemicals. Tim will tell you what you're allowed to use. I don't have any idea. But I know that if you mow grass shorter than 4 this time of year especially, it promotes it.
Sure.
If it's green, you play on it, or I'm sure you'd rather have a nice
If it's
lush
green, we play on it. If it's brown, we play on it. If it's mud,
Okay.
we still play on it.
So, I mean, it wouldn't be a deal breaker not to have Kentucky, or, a beautiful Fescue grass.
Correct.
Okay.
DuraTurf is something that I know has been put on several soccer fields, especially in our area. DuraTurf is probably a brand name, but it's a mix of bluegrass and fescues.
Right.
So it's.
I mean, if the weeds were to
it.
come in, are we okay? I'm just trying to, because I
Yeah.
don't know, do you have any ideas on that, Tim?
You know what? All that stuff I think can be worked out. It's not one thing specific is going to be a deal breaker on this part or that part, and I think we're just going to have to go through and work through the specifics when we get there. We're not there yet,
Absolutely.
but we need those dimensions. I think that's really important, and I don't know whether you've got. Do we have an email for? Jay? Or
Yeah.
if
Yeah, Rick and I
you got
have
the,
got
okay,
those
good
emails.
deal.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
that would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Hey,
And then-
Jay, you mentioned concerns about the dog park and your insurance for soccer. With it being where it's located and the ditch in between it, are you less concerned about it now?
Yeah. So to second the comment earlier, my sister raises search and rescue dogs. I'm no expert by any means, but I've also heard the same concerns brought up. I know the community is very interested in a dog park. By no means do what I say, no dog park. It does concern me when insurance comes into play. For soccer specifically, we are not allowed to have any dogs on the park. So this may create a problem for that. Either our insurance rates could go up or they may just not cover us, which would then drive us to look elsewhere. Is it possible to consider maybe relocating a dog park specifically using one of the other facilities in the community? Something to think about.
Would it be too difficult for you to check with your insurance company
Absolutely.
and just say, hey, look, here's what's being proposed. How would that affect us, if at all?
Yep, absolutely. I've already
Appreciate
got
it.
an email in. I'm waiting on a response.
Great minds.
Part of what we came up with was, I think around 2014, the Enon strategic plan, and one of the primary things that people wanted was a dog park, a facility where they could bring people, and a place where they had a long way they could walk or jog or whatever. So that's kind of where a lot of this stuff evolved, is off of
It did.
the committee work from
It did.
back then.
Input.
So the big thing was people said there's no place around Enon where you could actually take your family and recreate. So
I know there's a large field at Galloway Park. When IV was torn down and soccer and baseball moved away from IV, I know that was we started looking at all the parks, trying to figure out how we could squeeze all of our fields onto the parks. Ultimately decided that we wanted to consolidate into a single location. So similar to this, if we can consolidate all of our fields here, that then opens up other green spaces. Galloway Park comes to mind as a nice big open area. I know one of the comments I saw was having a dog park near a playground. It's right there.
absolutely.
It's a larger area. It's obviously not as large as this. But you can still have walking paths, that kind of thing in that area. But again, just thoughts, things to
Appreciate
consider.
it.
Yep, absolutely. I'm gonna slip my second hat on. Scouting. Before IV was torn down, we replaced the flagpole at the baseball fields. We still have that plaque. We still have that flagpole. And I know, Rick, I had mentioned to you, we have that and it's available as something that could be installed at this park.
Awesome.
It's a nice, high quality, pretty much brand new flagpole.
And actually,
So-
that's where we talked a little bit about, and the roundabout there, I thought would be an ideal place to put a flag and something that would commemorate either the area or the scouting or something the community would be interested in.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jay.
No problem.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
comments.
Thank you.
Anybody else who is not addressed? Yes.
Pam Cottrell. I'm here with Springfield News Sun, but I'm also live on River Pike. And I have a question about just about the old playground, the current playground that you have there. Do you have plans of, as you go through this, you'll gradually make improvements with that and just keep up with that playground and keep it up to date and all of that?
Over the years, we've added to that, and I don't know that we have any specific plans on any piece of equipment, at this time, but that's certainly something we would want to continue over the years. done the same thing at Galloway Park. We try to add a piece here or there over the years
Updated and.
to try to keep it updated. I will tell you, some of that equipment was around way back in the day when I started with the
From
village.
a
It's old-fashioned, but it's still
drive-in,
used. So,
Yeah, I wondered, and that could possibly, if you ever decide to do something like that, might be a spot for a splash pad or something like that, if you decide that that's the right way to go.
gotcha.
Yeah, okay, so that type of stuff will go. Okay, yeah, that was my main question on how that was gonna change. Thank you.
Thank you
And
very much.
One thing we do use is Kevin is constantly looking for any type of grants that are available for us now on, I think, about any time you can find anything like that, you're soliciting or checking for it.
Well, the upgrade to the walking path, the existing walking path, that was a Nature Works grant from ODNR. So that was a good find, and that's been kind of a 2-year project or whatever. But yeah, we're constantly looking at ways that we can fund upgrades, if you will, to our parks. So, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Casey Young, live at 4750 Dayton, Springfield Road. Just wanted to comment again on the soccer. I've coached youth soccer for 12 years, assistant coach at the high school. I think this is a great opportunity for the area. A couple things to keep in mind. If you've ever went to Athletes in Action, they have the turf fields, multi-use fields. You can, if you plan your playing surfaces where you can have a wide field or a long field. You can put a full-size field, and then you can go the other direction, put 2 smaller fields, and you can maximize your potential on those. They also use one of their baseball fields, multi-purpose turf fields, for soccer as well. So just look, maybe traveling there to kind of see how they do it and what they do for the size of the fields. I think they do a great job down there.
Where's this at again, sir?
Athletes in Action down in Xenia.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have 2 very large turf fields, and you can play 2 games side by side, or 4 games on both 2 fields, or 2 big full-size fields. But I would, that way you maximize your small fields, your large fields as well, because if you have tournaments, you're going to need a little bit of both. The grass fields that you currently have, I've attempted to use those in the past. And they were not good playing surfaces for mole holes and stuff like that.
Exactly
Very
right.
dangerous, and I've had girls out there, and just we had to stop. But that would be concern is maintaining those. I think the biggest thing was the mole holes or the holes in the ground. So the type of grass that you're going to put down, I think, is ultimately key to maintaining it to a good playing surface. I echo the comment about mowing it, because if it doesn't get mowed, we've dealt with that up at Eagle City. It gets mowed maybe once every 2 weeks, and you're kicking through 5 inches of grass, and it's not very good for kids learning to play soccer, because then you go to other places like Beaver Creek, and they have that nice astroturf type grass, and you get beat up on. So I think keeping in mind the size of the fields, the number of fields on a soccer standpoint, I think you can maximize all of those in different directions. But I think traveling into some of these other places like AIA or the Athletes in Action, seeing how they utilize theirs would be a big key. Have you talked to any organizations like, Beaver Creek has their big soccer twice a year. They have their big soccer tournaments that bring in hundreds and hundreds of teams from multi-states. I think that's an opportunity with this that you could be a part of that brings a lot of revenue.
Right.
So thank you.
To address a couple of your remarks, Todd and I were even talking before the meeting about whether we want to totally strip the existing soccer fields down there now, take the topsoil and then put the clay base underneath it, and then put the topsoil back, or just put the clay on top of where it is now. But yeah, the playing surface is the ultimate interest right now as far as getting that quick turnover. Another thing you mentioned, there's a brand new sports complex up in Toledo with Cedar Point. That's a fantastic facility. You've also, we try to draw upon different areas where we've ran across. Rantoul, Illinois, they've got a sports complex there that's phenomenal. $22 million though. So, we it wouldn't serve our purpose by not mowing it or not keeping the maintenance up on that to make it a place where people want to come.
Another thought, there are some like universities and that are, I think, required to repurpose their fields, and sometimes they'll put new ones in. I know a couple years ago, Urbana was redoing their fields, and their old field they were getting rid of, which you could still use it. They were looking for places to purchase that and sell it at a discounted cost, and so that's something to maybe look at. There might be places that are getting new turf and to use their older turf to use on other fields. So just an idea.
I think somebody's got turf from UD on Marketplace right now trying to sell. So,
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council, township? Brooke?
I just want to say, just so I don't get in trouble, that I am also here a representative for Eden softball. We do have fields, like Jeremy said, but we appreciate you doing this for the community and the kids. I do think, like the soccer fields, I had a cousin and friends who played soccer here back when I was little, and I think the more they get used, the less moles would be there. Obviously, they're not going to be there if kids are there playing. Also, I feel like that's, like you've said, I think the organizations would definitely be willing to help with upkeep. I'm kind of speaking for all of them. And hopefully, that would help with all of that as well.
But those of us that have participated over the years, that's just how it is. We're used to it, right? And
Yeah.
we expect to put a little
Well,
sweat into it, to put some
right.
ownership. I think
Right.
that's just kind of how it is in Enid.
And I think
So,
also being as soccer fields, we've lost soccer fields and baseball fields. A lot of the community knows how important that is to get that back home, and will really,
I agree.
upkeep with it and help out. So, again, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Again, Penny, just being real practical, I only see one place where you have restrooms in the middle of the ball diamonds for all of this acreage. I don't know whether you're gonna porta potty everything around or whether you're gonna have some other built-in shelters for restrooms. But if you want families to come with kids, you're gonna need restrooms and possibly even drinking fountains for them. So that's one thing. And another possible thing is, instead of a dog park over there, maybe a bike park with the ramps for all the kids that are bikers and not into softball or baseball or some of these other sports. There are a lot of bikers we have.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Garrett Starr, Eden and Township, lifelong. A couple of different things all over the place. Use-wise for the fields, I know you kind of said it was like a build it and they will come type thing. We're not, I'm with Eden Soccer as well. We're not the only soccer club. They're not the only baseball club. So how, I guess, who would handle scheduling, or how would that work when you have two different soccer organizations that are like, I want to use these fields this fall?
I don't think we've got to that point. Speaking for myself, I would much rather it go to first dibs is Eden Little League and Eden Say Soccer instead of select organizations that have kids from all over.
For profits.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my intent. Now, if we can fit more than one organization in it, great. But I think we still have to figure out how the scheduling is going to go, how that's going to happen. If we give it to Eden Little League for 6 months or 3 months for certain days, whatever it may be, we haven't got that far, I don't think.
You guys have mentioned a few different parks that are set up similar to this. Have any of you guys actually gone and talked to the administrators of like Lebanon's or somebody like that has a baseball soccer combo with a shared concession stand, and how these things are run and managed and what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, Sylvania Park up outside of Pacesetter Park in Sylvania, Ohio. It's a complex that's owned by the township. It's owned by the village, and it's owned by the Board of Education. It's 126 acres, and talking to them, they work well together. I mean, this is a complex that it's all grass, but it's beautiful. They take manicure at. You got a separate baseball, separate soccer, big area of all kind of games. And they talk about how it's so successful, how they're running the whole program. And that would be one I'd like to try to mirror, to be honest. But the tournaments themselves are where they say they make the biggest financial impact on that, and the concessions that's a great facility up there with grass.
And those are the type of things as we progress that we need to do. We need to talk to people that have successful operations. What are you doing? What did you find that worked? What doesn't work? But I do have to say one thing about Jeremy. I think the whole idea of this is community based. Yeah. So we want it to be profitable, but we want this to be for the Enid community.
Okay.
So I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Okay. I don't mean this to sound negative either. It seems like there's a whole lot left in the air with this, and I understand it's due to its infancy and it's new and everything, but there are some big things like funding. Dirt work, for instance, Todd can vouch for this, like doing a 3-foot lift or a 5-foot lift on soil, that's not, you just don't strip land and put it down. You have to have civil engineering groups that come in and test it as you do it. Otherwise, you end up with fields that 3 years later have a 18-inch sway.
Right.
It's all gonna be systematic drainage, all of it's gonna be
But
set
that's
up.
so I guess my next question would be, as opposed to everybody here wearing different hats, and they also have multiple hats they wear during the week, and this isn't their full-time gig, at what point do you commit to hiring a company that does this and looking at levies and that kind of thing?
Well, there's no levies I haven't looked at, but I have reached out to a couple companies. Like I told them as we've discussed it, for us to go out there on a 60 acre, like you say, and raise I'm not gonna be able to do all
So
that.
you could be on 929
So-
for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is, my recommendation was rough in the hole, you know what I mean, get the whole thing roughed in. All the dirt moved, all your borrow pits, whatever we need, all the dirt we have to truck in, and then rough in the tops, but maybe do like the top couple fields in your soccer fields, and then leave this for later, finishing, but it's already roughed in. Because you know as well as I do, it's not getting any cheaper.
Yeah.
If we do it today, it's gonna be cheap as it's probably ever
That's
gonna
what
be.
I was asking, yeah, it's gonna go up.
And the second thing is, if you don't get it all close, and let's say we do a couple and we have $1 million in a field up there, and you start fooling around down here, and you got not only dust, but you got big equipment
Runoff,
moving,
yep.
things moving, liability issues. I'd like to have all that done.
That
But
was
if we were
my-
doing anything, have a small landscape or whoever
Yeah.
finish out a field. That's the way I'm looking at it. So, yes, there is a thing. We're even talking about possibility of getting a loan or whatever we have to do to try to get everything roughed in at one time. So we're looking at a lot of different options. I'm not going to be out there with 4 or 5 of us on skid steers trying to raise things 3 feet.
Yeah, you will.
So,
Yeah, you will.
this is going to be done by,
So you guys are thinking loan as opposed to levy or something like that on this?
well, we
I
don't
think-
know. We're just talking,
I-
we're spitballing ideas.
From speaking to other organizations, soccer, baseball, whatever levy, like I'm pretty sure our involvement and like we would push for that. Like we would support it, obviously, and get signs out and everything, all of it and stuff.
You would support a what again, please?
Levy.
Okay.
Like to play off his point of now rather than later, because if you start, say you finish those first 3 fields and then baseball's next year, but baseball gets puts off because of funding, this whole thing could last 15, 20 years and not be as nice as it could have been had it just been done.
So you would support a tax levy for the specific purpose of this development?
Yeah, so other areas, that's why I asked if you guys got into other areas. Other areas neighboring us that have done this have done that.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't know necessarily if it was through like the county parks and recreation or if it was on the township level, but some of the bigger cities, towns have done it individually because they have a higher tax base.
I think our target so far, we've really tried to look at corporate sponsors or particularly some of the healthcare facilities to see if whether it might want to be Kettering Health or Premier Health or somebody that has major pockets that may want to look at naming rights because you've got clear access on the Route 4 flyover off of 70, the backside of that property. So, you could conceivably put some major signage right across there and have somebody be proud of that. So, that's something we've been working with regularly, trying to figure out, okay, where can we go with this? And I think the last thing any of us want to do is to add it into the tax base itself. But we have looked at the possibility of maybe a possible sales tax contingent to the township and the village, or whether that would be possible even. So, we're throwing all kind of things out, just trying to figure out where to come up with this, because Let's face it, that's our major uphill battle to try to come
I
up with such a
appreciate
figure.
hearing that, though. That's,
Yeah, that's the elephant that has to be caught before you can. Who would be the point of contact for grants? Like if we, because there's a bunch of soccer grants, there's a bunch of baseball. Would you be the one we'd?
Kevin, our administrator.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's it.
Thank you for your comments.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it very much. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one else, I would entertain a motion and a second to adjourn.
Second.
Who made that motion?
It was Paul.
Oh, Paul, okay.
Yeah. Made a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Avery and second by Mr. Pettit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thanks to all of you for coming. Appreciate it. Feel free to stick around and chat if you want.
You throw me under the bus really quick.
No, I heard you getting ready to say.
Todd turned me off.
Well, you said it.
Okay, that's for the frisbee golf. Frisbee golf.